Some swords were built to win battles. Others were built to control belief. Across history, a handful of blades refused to behave like ordinary weapons. Metals that shouldn't exist. Techniques lost for thousands of years. Swords hidden by governments, destroyed by ritual, or sealed away from science itself. Tonight, we're not talking about legends. We're talking about physical objects, recovered from shipwrecks, tombs, bogs, and shrines, that challenge what history says ancient people were capable of. A metal linked to Atlantis. A sword no emperor is allowed to see. Bronze engineered to defeat time. Blades fed with blood before battle. And a weapon said to move like it's alive. These aren't fantasy artifacts. They're real, documented, and deeply uncomfortable. Because once a weapon stops being just a tool, it becomes power. For centuries, historians said Atlantis was a story, and Orichalcum was just a word on a page. Then, something impossible surfaced from the sea. Off the coast of Sicily, divers exploring an ancient shipwreck uncovered dozens of metal ingots, heavy, reddish, and unlike any known Bronze Age alloy. They weren't treasure, they were cargo. When scientists analyzed the metal, the results were uncomfortable. This wasn't simple bronze. It was a complex copper-zinc alloy with traces of nickel and lead, a material matching ancient descriptions of orichalcum, a metal Plato claimed powered a lost civilization. But here's where the story stops being philosophical and starts being physical. This alloy required precise temperature control and deliberate composition. Not experimentation, not accident. Whoever made it understood metallurgy at a level most ancient cultures weren't supposed to have. Even more troubling, the shipwreck dates to around the 6th century BC. That means this metal wasn't rare, wasn't sacred, wasn't hidden. It was being transported, traded, standardized across the Mediterranean. Ancient texts hint that orichalcum wasn't just ornamental. It was strong, corrosion-resistant, suitable for elite tools and weapons, blades that would outlast bronze, reserved for those in power. So the real mystery isn't whether orichalcum existed. It did. The mystery is who mastered it, and why that knowledge vanished so completely that it survived only as a legend. Atlantis may never be found, but its metal already has been. And once a myth becomes measurable, history stops feeling settled. Most legendary swords are locked behind glass. This one is locked behind law, religion, and silence. The Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi is one of Japan's 3 imperial regalia, objects so sacred that even emperors are forbidden from publicly displaying them. No photographs, no museum exhibits, no confirmation it even still exists. According to Japan's oldest chronicles, the sword was discovered inside the body of a mythical serpent, then passed down through emperors as a symbol of divine authority. But mythology isn't what makes Kusanagi disturbing. It's the secrecy. Unlike other lost artifacts, Kusanagi is not missing. It is actively guarded, stored at the Atsuta shrine under ritual protection, handled only by priests, and even they are not permitted to inspect it directly. During imperial coronations, the sword is transported wrapped, sealed, and unseen. No emperor has ever publicly verified its condition. No metallurgical tests have ever been allowed. There is no official description of its material, age, or construction. That alone is abnormal. Japan is one of the most archaeologically transparent nations on Earth. Yet this object sits completely outside academic access. Not because it's fragile, but because it represents legitimacy. Here's what unsettles historians. Ancient references describe Kusanagi as unusually heavy, unusually sharp, and capable of altering its surroundings. A poetic way of saying it didn't behave like ordinary bronze blades of its era. Some scholars suspect it may predate classical Japanese metallurgy entirely, possibly originating from continental Asia, brought during early migrations, and later mythologized to anchor imperial rule. Others believe the original sword may have been lost, replaced with a ritual proxy long ago. But no one can prove either theory, because no one is allowed to look. That makes Kusanagi unique, not because it's magical, but because it's an artifact whose power comes from withheld knowledge. In a world where ancient weapons are dissected, scanned, and catalogued, this sword remains untouched by science. And when an object is protected not by glass, but by belief, tradition, and authority, history isn't just preserved, it's controlled. Most bronze weapons rot. They crack, corrode, and turn green with age. This one didn't. In a sealed tomb in China, archaeologists uncovered a bronze sword over 2,300 years old. It had been buried in wet soil, the worst possible environment for metal. Yet when it was pulled out, the blade still shined. No rust, no decay, and when tested, it was still sharp enough to cut paper. This sword is known as the Sword of Goujian. But here's the part most people don't know. Chemical analysis revealed something strange. The sword wasn't made from ordinary bronze. Its core was high in copper, making it flexible. But its edges contained more tin, making them hard and sharp. That alone is impressive. But then scientists found something even more unsettling. The blade was coated with a thin chemical layer, a natural anti-rust shield made from sulfur compounds. This coating blocked oxygen and moisture at a molecular level. In simple terms, the sword was engineered not to decay. This wasn't luck. This wasn't accident. Someone designed it this way. Even more disturbing, the technology shouldn't exist in that era. Similar rust-resistant treatments wouldn't appear in modern metallurgy until thousands of years later. And this sword wasn't alone. Other weapons from the same period show nearly identical construction. What researchers quietly call the sword's twins, meaning this wasn't a miracle blade. It was part of a system, a lost manufacturing method. The inscriptions on the sword name King Goujian, a ruler who lost his kingdom, lived in humiliation, then returned to crush his enemies. His blade mirrors his story, patient, precise, impossible to destroy. So the real mystery isn't how one sword survived. It's how an entire tradition of advanced bronze engineering appeared, worked perfectly, and then vanished. The sword didn't defy time. It was built to outlast it. Viking swords weren't just weapons. Some of them were messages. Across Scandinavia, archaeologists have uncovered Viking swords buried in strange ways, bent, broken, twisted beyond use. At first, historians thought this was accidental damage from battle. They were wrong. These swords were deliberately destroyed. Many were found in bogs, rivers, and marshes, places the Vikings believed were gateways to the gods. Not battlefields, not graves, sacred ground. And the swords themselves tell a disturbing story. Along the center of many Viking blades runs a deep channel, often called a Bloodgroove. Despite the name, it wasn't meant to drain blood. It made the blade lighter, without losing strength. But what was found inside these grooves shocked researchers. Microscopic analysis revealed traces of human blood, animal tissue, and organic residue trapped deep inside the metal. Not from combat alone, from repeated exposure. Some blades were buried alongside human remains, decapitated skulls, bound bodies, and sacrificed animals. This wasn't warfare. This was ritual. The Vikings believed weapons carried spirit. A sword that tasted blood gained power. And when its owner died, the blade had to be killed too, bent or broken, so it could follow them into the afterlife. That explains why so many elite Viking swords were destroyed instead of passed down. To modernize, it looks like waste. To the Vikings, it was necessary. Even more unsettling, some swords show signs of ritual use before battle, not after. Meaning blood was offered to the blade first, to awaken it. These weren't tools. They were participants. So when we imagine Viking swords as symbols of strength and honor, we're only seeing half the truth. They were also objects of fear, fed with blood, buried with intent, steel-shaped not just by fire, but by belief.